spacing between the lines of rubber trees where we put a line of forest trees in the middle. At the end of the day, in both the short and long term,
안녕하세요. 매일매일 운동하기를 실천하고 있는 동탄 왕포입니다.
cover and a bonus in sustaining the environment.
지금 밖에 날씨가 너무 좋습니다. 바보 같아. CNN에 틀어놓고 떠들고 있었어. 밖에 날씨가 너무 좋아요. 이런 날 나가서 놀아야죠. 오늘은 일요일 4월 25일인가요? 이틀 동안 운동 대충 했어요. 예, 인정합니다. 술 먹고 막 그러느라고 정신이 없었네요. 자, 이제 다시 오늘은 쉬는 날이니까 30분 꽉꽉 채워서 운동을 하도록 하겠습니다. 일단 스트레칭 위주로 하고요. 네, 해볼게요. 오늘 날씨 진짜 너무 좋다 진짜. 이런 날 집에만 있기에 너무 안타까운 날씨입니다.
Sanitation system through the transformation of waste to resources. I'm Dr. Sasha Kramer, and I'm the co-founder and executive director of Soil. People sign up for a household subscription to the sanitation service, and then we take the waste to compost it and transform it into fertile soil. We are currently serving about 9,000 people. It is amazing to see the impact that having private sanitation can have on one's sense of comfort, safety, and dignity. Soil's vision for the future is to create a replicable model that can be used not only in Haiti, but in growing cities all around the world.
Tonight, exclusive. Vice President Kamala Harris joins Dana as she nears the first 100 days on the job. The barrier-breaking leader talks police reform, gun violence, and immigration. State of the Union tonight.
Real news that shapes our world.
Connect the World with Becky Anderson, Monday through Friday on CNN.
The Dangote Group stands at the forefront of African enterprise. Since 1978, we've touched the lives of millions of people by meeting their basic needs. Our belief in the promise of Africa has taken us into 14 African countries with substantial investments that will propel the continent towards greater prosperity, promising jobs, improved standards of living, and economic growth. Dangote, for an empowered Africa.
The Profit Point, in association with Dangote.
Welcome back. From selling coats and blankets to operating in automotive, logistics and machinery sectors on multiple continents, South African company Barlow World has spent nearly 120 years adapting, acquiring and expanding. CNN's Cyril Vanier caught up with Barlow World Group CEO Dominique Zuela to talk about the company's plans for the future and where he sees opportunities for growth.
I think as a leader, from time to time, you need to be able to say, what have you been successful at and what have you not been successful at? And be able to call it when you're not successful. My name is Dominique Zuela. I'm the chief executive of Barlow World.
What struck me about the history of Barlow World is it's so interesting. It's one of those companies that started almost 120 years ago with Mr. Barlow, Ernest Barlow, starting a wool company.
It started all in 1902. Major Ernest Barlow was out here as part of the British troops during the Anglo-Boer War. After the war, he liked the country so much that he decided to stay behind. The family back in Lancashire in the UK had 2 wool mills. Out of that, he was able to start Thos Barlows and Sons, mainly selling the blankets.
The company has gone from just selling those blankets to spanning so many sectors, from car rental, managing industrial equipment, to consumer products. So you just bought a grain company. How did you expand from what you were then to what you are now?
It all started with Caterpillar business. I think the turning point was when we were able to be distributor of Caterpillar business back in 1927. Out of that, we became a conglomerate in the 80s, where basically we were 79 out of Fortune 500. We employed 240,000 people. In the 90s, we unbundled bulk of the business. We had another unbundling, in 2006-7, and where we are now left with the business that we have.
It seems to me there were several turning points. One being in the 70s and 80s when the company expanded into mining and pharmaceuticals. Tell us about what drove that expansion.
One of the key issues, for companies really to, find a way of surviving is a crisis. If you think about the major crisis that happened, post-depression, one of the key ones in South Africa was the apartheid, when there was a lot of sanctions against companies that were invested in South Africa. And those companies, as they sought to leave the country, they had to find buyers for their businesses. Barloworld saw that an opportunity to be buying most of those businesses. That's really how we were able to garner so many businesses. But then when it came the 90s, as South Africa became a democracy, the market didn't quite like conglomerates. The company had to unbundle. And Barloworld focused more around businesses that were geared towards infrastructure, because we are anticipating that with the new government, there's going to be growth in infrastructure.
But it seems there was another turning point, which was in the 90s, and you started doing business in Russia. You're also doing business in Siberia.
It's really around emerging market. We believe that, as Barloworld, our DNA is very strong in emerging markets. In Southern Africa, we probably operate in about 12 countries and very difficult areas like the DRC, if you've been, Mozambique and Angola. And so the DNA of our people is used to operating in that environment. So our expansion into Siberia was the next logical place, because if you think about infrastructure, the mining activity in that area, our view is that when we operate in those types of areas, we have the right understanding.
The company plans to sell off parts of the business that it doesn't see doing as well in the long term, such as the logistics, if I'm not mistaken. So walk us through that thinking.
I believe that Caterpillar is our core business. It's a very cyclical business. You've got to have some kind of business that's counter-cyclical. It mustn't be too far off, in terms of maybe where you operate. And our view is that the grain business, which is more food, it's going to give us growth in the areas where we're currently operating in Africa. It's a very defensive side of the business. And with urbanization in Africa, people are now relying more on processed food. So our view was that you're not going to get on the consumer side of food, but more on the industrial consumer side, where we actually prepare ingredients to supply to industries, people that we know how to do business with.
What does Barloworld look like in, say, 5 to 10 years?
The next 5 years, Barloworld is going to be a company made up of 2 divisions. It will be an equipment business, distributing Caterpillar products across at least 16 of those regions. On the other hand, we will be having a food ingredient business across the rest of Africa. And that's basically going to be the Barloworld of the future, that's more focused and specializes in the areas where it operates in.
That does it for us here on Marketplace Africa, and you can head to our website for the latest stories and if you're with us on social media as well. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Zain Asher. I'll see you next time in the Marketplace.
The Profit Point, in association with Dan Gote.
We've missed the globe-trotting and adventures, and we're longing to get out and go. Uncovering the city's DNA. Meeting people who share its secrets. And making discoveries that wow. They're beautiful. It's a world of wonder now. Go and see it. Today on CNN, in association with Turkish Airlines.
On the next Living Golf, Golf for Good.
I can use my platform to really grow the game of golf and inspire others.
Meet the players, diversifying access to the sport.
I wanted to give that same opportunity to young girls around the world.
And the charities raising awareness.
Golf and the On-Course Foundation give me a life again.
Join me, Shane O'Donoghue, on this month's Living Golf. Tonight on CNN, in association with Golf Saudi.
The Dangote Group stands at the forefront of African enterprise, with substantial investments that will propel the continent towards greater prosperity. Dangote, for an empowered Africa.
Hello and welcome to Marketplace Africa. We cover the biggest economic trends impacting the continent. I'm Zain Asher. According to the data company Research and Markets, the global coffee industry was worth nearly $466 billion in 2020. For coffee producers in Sierra Leone, growing interest in their beans could mean big business in the future. We took a look at how homegrown entrepreneurs are looking to revive this formerly booming sector and what the discovery of a rare coffee plant could mean for the country's coffee prices. Take a look. It's morning in Freetown, Sierra Leone. Amidst the morning rush are scenes of a daily tradition. Commuters on the go, grabbing a cup of coffee. But there are very few coffee shops to be found here. Instead, carts peddling instant coffee roam busy streets, and grocery store aisles are lined with similar products. It wasn't always this way.
Between the 70s and the 90s, before the war, coffee was really the main cash crop.
Sierra Leone has been producing and exporting coffee since the 1800s. According to the Natural Resources Institute at the University of Greenwich, the country exported up to 25,000 tons of the commodity annually until 1991.
After the Civil War, both cocoa and coffee plantations were abandoned, but perhaps the cocoa maybe survived a bit better. But the coffee has been very much a second priority because the volumes have been much smaller, usually only about 2,000 or 3,000 tons.
Now entrepreneurs are looking to cultivate the country's coffee culture.
We need to target the layman in Sierra Leone who can drink coffee, at least to make it part of us. We decided to open a coffee shop. So if you don't have the money, you don't have that finance to get the beans, to get the ground coffee package, you will come in the morning and then get a cup of coffee and then drink it for a reasonable price. Instead of you go and buy Nescafe.
Hannah Tarawali is one of the main homegrown coffee producers in Freetown. She currently ships to Liberia and says she'll start direct exports to Italy within the year. Her local clients include hotels, offices and grocery stores.
When I started, it was me alone doing coffee in Sierra Leone, a female doing roasted coffee. So now we have Rena's Coffee. And I know a lot of people out there, if they have the finance, if they have the capital, they also want to do coffee.
Growing the local market is something researcher Daniel Sarmu says could easily pay off, and something he's highlighted in his work drafting Sierra Leone's national coffee policy.
The market is almost like flooded with all of this foreign coffee. Some people think if they go into the production, the secondary production and marketing of their own native coffee, they will face tremendous challenge. But I strongly believe if you package it well, you do your necessary test and it's being published on your package, and you say this is from Sierra Leone, and it has been tested by the Standards Bureau, and it is good for consumption, and it's well advertised, people will start patronizing your business.
While local entrepreneurs like Tarawali are relatively new to Sierra Leone's coffee production, larger foreign-owned companies like Sierra Coffee Mills have been growing coffee in the country for decades.
Our own production would be around about 500 tons, which was from our own farmer network. And over the last few years, the profile of the Sierra Leonean coffee and the cocoa sector has really increased for importers in Europe and America in particular, whereby they're now taking more and more interest in our produce, particularly coffee and cocoa. So I think this gives us a lot of optimism for the future.
The buzz continues to grow with researchers rediscovering the Stenophila plant, a rare and prized coffee strain native to Sierra Leone in abandoned coffee farms in 2018.
It had a reputation of having very good quality, as good as the Arabica coffees. Historically, it was grown and exported from Sierra Leone. And this was from about the mid-1800s to about 1920. As the last record we can find of it being exported.
Researchers like Hagar say the bean produced from these plants could provide the jolt that's needed to put Sierra Leone firmly on the specialty coffee map.
Coffee markets are very interested in anything that's different, particularly if it has some good flavor attributes.
According to the US State Department, close to 90% of the labor force in Sierra Leone works in the informal sector, with the majority working in agriculture. For those in the country's coffee sector, they're hoping their continued success will mean more than a good pour somewhere else.
There's no way we're going to compete with Ghana, with Nigeria, and the other countries around us for coffee production. But if we have a niche market, we have something very unique. I mean, we will be asking the world for the price that we want.
Coming up next, we go from coffee to a major international consumer brand looking to expand across the African continent.
Dangote for an empowered Africa.
I would describe One World as compelling, inclusive, and original. I want this show to be a place where everyone watching has a stake in the global conversation.
One World with Zain Asher premieres Tuesday on CNN.
Coronavirus. To get daily news updates in your inbox, sign up for the CNN newsletter. Coronavirus. Fact versus fiction.
I'm Julia Chastity. I'll speak to newsmakers, risk takers, and the ultimate game changers.
First Move with Julia Chatterley. Weeknights on CNN.
The Dangote Group stands at the forefront of African enterprise. Since 1978, we've touched the lives of millions of people by meeting their basic needs. Our belief in the promise of Africa has taken us into 14 African countries, with substantial investments that will propel the continent towards greater prosperity, promising jobs, improved standards of living, and economic growth. Dangote, for an empowered Africa.
아이고야.
In association with Dangote.
With a presence in 30 countries across Africa, personal care giant Kimberly Clark has a sizable footprint on the continent, one they will hope will only grow as they push to scale up. CNN's Jeff Vanier caught up with Kimberly Clark's Vice President of Middle East and Africa, Ihab Abouf, to talk about the growth potential of emerging markets and how the company is looking to localize the supply chain on the continent.
Over 200 million new babies will be born in Africa over the next 5 years. So we believe we can double our business in Africa over that time horizon. Hi, I'm Ihab Abouf, and I'm the Vice President for Middle East Africa for Kimberly Clark.
For many of our viewers, Kimberly Clark needs no introduction, but for those for whom it does, maybe can you succinctly tell us?
Kimberly Clark is a company that's been a leader in the space of baby and child care, feminine care, and personal care, with brands like Huggies, Kleenex, Kotex. We are present in more than 80 countries, and we serve more than 2 billion consumers around the world every day with our products.
So why are you expanding your presence and laying deeper roots in Africa now?
We entered Nigeria a few years ago and again saw the potential, and that drove us to say we want to get even bigger and on the ground in Nigeria. And as we did that, we realized we've got a formula that could be working, that we can scale in other markets within Africa. 10 years ago, emerging markets presented 50% of the global GDP. 10 years later, they are 60% of the globe. So they are growing significantly faster than the world.
Kimberly Clark saw demand for its products increase globally during the pandemic. You mentioned the African numbers. The net sales globally grew 4% in 2020. Organic sales grew 6%. How did you keep up with demand at exactly the same time that supply chains were being stressed and tested around the world?
Prioritize the key items where the consumers really needed, and hence that helped us increase our capacity. We relied on our network of supply that enabled us to stay in supply. And I think we partnered well with our retail partners and customers in the sense of ensuring that inventories and inventory levels are spread evenly so that it can match the supply and the spikes in demand. And I think by doing these three things, we really were able to meet unusual spikes in demand, but also an unusual level of demand.
In Nigeria, Kimberly Clark is pivoting from importing and distributing its products to actually manufacturing its products in country. Why did you decide to make that pivot?
Nigeria is the largest economy in Africa. It's got one of the highest population growth coming, 6 million babies a year. The market in the categories in which we are operating is still under-penetrated, so there's a lot of consumers to still adopt our products. Our categories in which we operate are
그만하겠습니다.
10 to 15%. We believe that the Nigerian market presents a huge growth opportunity, and we want to be as close as possible from a supply chain standpoint to the Nigerian consumer, which allows us to be responsive, to be more efficient, and to capitalize on that growth opportunity even better going forward.
What do the next 5 years look like for Kimberly Clark in Africa?
We want to double our business, and we want to accelerate our profitability even faster than that. We believe we've got the right products and the right consumer insights and the route to market.